Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye brings together her top security aides to discuss the potential for more North Korean provocations following the regime's test firing of more missiles this week. Turkey's president declares a 3-month state of emergency to tackle the forces behind the recent coup attempt. First celebrating its 20th year, the Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival opens tonight for an 11-day run. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 21st of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We begin at the nation's top office. President Park Geun-hye has called for national unity on countering North Korea's nuclear threats. This at a National Security Council meeting this morning, called to check on the country's security conditions following North Korea's missile tests on Tuesday. This is what she said. She said protecting the nation and its people is not just the job of the government and the president. Lawmakers and the people themselves must also join forces to protect South Korea, South Korean families and South Korean children. She also pointed out that the South Korean military is detecting unusual movements from North Korea associated possibly with a 5th nuclear test. The president noted that the North could go forward with a test any time now and asked whether the opposition sides can propose an alternative to Seoul and Washington's decision to deploy the U.S. missile defense system THAAD to the Korean peninsula. This all comes after Pyongyang launched 3 ballistic missiles on Tuesday in an apparent protest against that decision. This meeting came a week after the previous one, where the president stressed that it's time to end, quote, unnecessary debates over the THAAD deployment. A lawmaker from the U.S. state of Arizona has told South Koreans that they have nothing to fear from the deployment of that THAAD missile defense system to the country. His comments come as concerns linger about the health effects of the system, especially on those living nearby. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
A U.S. lawmaker has stressed that the soon-to-be-deployed THAAD anti-missile defense system poses no health risk to local residents, hitting home his point by saying he would have one in his own backyard if he could. Republican Congressman Trent Franks says many evaluations have been taken on the electromagnetic waves emitted by the THAAD radar system, and they all show they do little or no harm to humans and agricultural goods.
And I would want THAAD outside in our backyard if we could get the military to put one there. Because I believe that it would be a protection to my children and no danger to them.
Franks made the remarks Wednesday in a meeting with South Korean reporters as the U.S. seeks to reassure South Koreans that THAAD is safe. Franks added that THAAD is the best way to protect against North Korea's missile threats. He also pointed out that the system has an interception rate of 99%.
THAAD has been a thoroughly tested system, and it has been extremely effective. And in fact, I have actually witnessed the tests with THAAD.
Protesters in South Korea claim the electromagnetic waves could harm local residents in Seongju County, despite continued efforts from Seoul and Washington to show the system poses no such threats. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has announced a 3-month state of emergency following last week's coup attempt. He says he will work as president and commander-in-chief with armed forces to cleanse a, quote, virus from the military in an attempt to maintain his control of the country. Park Jong-hong reports.
In a televised address to the nation, President Erdogan said the state of emergency was essential in order to swiftly restore stability to the country. He added that it was needed to remove all elements of the terrorist organization that were involved in the coup attempt.
The purpose of the declaration of the state of emergency is in fact to be able to take the most efficient steps in order to remove this threat as soon as possible, which is a threat to democracy, to the rule of law, and to the rights and freedoms of the citizens of our country.
He reassured citizens that the measure is aimed at protecting those values from attacks. The president lauded citizens who took to the streets last Friday to fight against the coup, calling them heroes, and those who were killed martyrs. He said the nation would never forget the bravery and sacrifice of those who lost their lives. According to the Turkish constitution, a state of emergency is allowed to last up to 6 months. An extensive purge has been in full swing in Turkey over the past several days. About 60,000 soldiers, police, judges, civil servants, and teachers have been rounded up, sacked, or placed under investigation since last week's failed coup. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's central bank governor says local banks need to keep an eye on their financial soundness amid the uncertainties in the global financial market. Speaking with the heads of major local banks in Seoul on Thursday, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said banks need to both monitor their assets and maintain an appropriate debt-to-equity ratio to cushion the current market volatility. He added there are concerns banks could see their profitability decline due to the record low interest rate and the government's ongoing corporate restructuring drive. He noted that market volatility has largely increased in the wake of Britain's decision to leave the European Union, as well as a possible shift in US monetary policy. Korea's finance minister says a proposal to revise the tax code will be geared toward job creation and breathing new life into the economy amid heightening uncertainties both at home and abroad. Yoo Il-ho laid out the proposed changes during a meeting between the ruling Saenuri Party and the government this morning. His remarks echo his ministry's that the proposed revisions will be employment-friendly in order to minimise the fallout from the government's ongoing corporate restructuring drive. The ministry will also seek to lower the tax burden on workers at small and mid-sized firms. The ministry plans to submit the proposal to the National Assembly this month and present it for consideration at a cabinet meeting in August. The European Union appears to be ready to clamp down on North Korea and anyone within the 28-nation bloc that could be aiding Pyongyang's overseas program of forced labour and related human rights abuses. Kwon So-ah reports.
European Union regulators are looking into whether any EU member states have violated laws related to North Korea's overseas workers and related human rights abuses. The European Commission said Wednesday that it's contacting countries within the 28-member bloc to investigate, including Poland, which is facing allegations of involvement in the practices. The EU investigation is seen as a follow-up to an assertion made by Dutch European Parliament member Kati Piri 2 months ago. Piri, who is in charge of foreign affairs, said North Koreans are being forced into labor abroad and are living as modern-day slaves in certain European countries, including Poland, which allegedly let around $70 million of its job creation budget flow into companies that hire North Korean workers. When asked about data on EU firms hiring North Koreans, the Commission said it holds no related records. A diplomatic source in Brussels says the EU usually does not interfere in issues related to North Korean forced labor and human rights abuses, leaving it up to the member states. However, the EU's initiative is seen as part of its efforts to comply with the stronger-than-ever sanctions on Pyongyang imposed by both the UN Security Council and independently by the EU. Tens of thousands of North Koreans are working overseas for the Kim Jong-un regime, and recent data estimates that around 7 people a month die of health or safety issues related to their working environment. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, British Prime Minister Theresa May has met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel to discuss the UK's withdrawal from the European Union. The two leaders agreed the negotiations shouldn't be held off for too long, but they won't begin this year. Oh Soo-young reports.
British Prime Minister Theresa May says the UK won't start negotiations on leaving the European Union this year. May met German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin on Wednesday, where the two leaders reached an understanding that Britain will take some time before activating Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, the legal mechanism for leaving the bloc. While Merkel agreed that the British government should define its interests and its views before negotiating an exit, she said the process shouldn't be delayed for too long.
No one wants a period of limbo, I believe, neither the British public nor the European member countries. But everyone has an interest in things being prepared carefully and for positions to be clear. I find it absolutely understandable that there is a certain amount of time needed.
Regardless of the UK's withdrawal from the regional bloc, the two leaders agreed to strengthen cooperation on trade, economic and security-related interests.
But I also want to be clear, here today and across Europe in the weeks ahead, that we are not walking away from our European friends. Britain will remain an outward-looking country and Germany will remain a vital partner and a special friend for us.
May will also hold talks with French President François Hollande on Thursday as part of her efforts to pave the way for a smoother Brexit process. Ahead of May's first foreign visit after taking office, Britain announced it would forfeit its 6-month presidency of the Council of the EU, coming up in the second half of 2016. Bucheon, Arirang News.
Now, it's another scorching hot day here in Korea. We have mostly cloudy skies and we might have on and off showers in some inland areas over the course of the day, but the lack of sunshine won't be enough to prevent the mercury level from reaching up to 33 degrees Celsius in the afternoon in certain areas. A heatwave warning has been issued across the country except for some parts of Gangwon-do, Gyeongsang-do and Jeju-do provinces. There have been 3 heat-related deaths this year, so make sure you keep yourself as hydrated as possible and try at least to stay cool. Korea's air traffic hit a record high in the first half of this year. According to the Transport Ministry, the number of flights crisscrossing over the skies of Korea came to nearly 360,000 during the January to June period, up more than 8% from the same period a year ago. That translates into an average of almost 2,000 flights a day. The number of international flights using Korea's airports jumped almost 10% to 216,000. Domestic flights climbed nearly 5% to 119,000. In particular, over 11,500 China-bound flights passed through Korea's airspace in the first half. That's up almost 10% on year. Now, the city of Seoul has launched a prepaid taxi voucher system for foreign tourists to prevent taxi fare scams. The vouchers are for transport to and from Incheon International Airport and locations in the Seoul metro area. The system, launched in conjunction with Korean travel company Hanatour, lets visitors pay a designated fare at a local Hanatour office before their trip. Then they pick up their voucher at Incheon International Airport when they land. Now, fares are set based on the destination. The system was launched at Hanatour's Hong Kong office earlier this month and will eventually be expanded to include Japan, Taiwan and China. Now, it's a big event in the movie world here in Korea because the Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival opens tonight for an 11-day run under the themes of love, fantasy and adventure. For more on the highly anticipated cinematic event for moviegoers in Korea but also around the world, Kim Jung-soo reports.
The 20th Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival kicks off on Thursday with a program of over 320 movies from 49 countries, including 49 world premieres, 23 international premieres, 71 Asian premieres, and 89 Korean premieres. The opening film is Captain Fantastic by director Matt Ross, a story about a man who tries to reintegrate back into society after living in isolation for 10 years. The Asian premiere of zombie horror animation film Seoul Station by Yeon Sang-ho will close the festival. Also in the lineup is a special David Bowie documentary tribute, a French cinema showcase just in time for the 130th anniversary of Korea-France bilateral relations, as well as a series of iconic Asian movies. This year's festival will also include a special industry gathering alongside its network of Asian fantastic films, which has been running since 2008. in order to strengthen its networking program for industry insiders. The festival continues through July 31st at movie theaters and other venues in and around Bucheon City Hall, with the city providing shuttle buses for festival goers. Kim Jung-soo, Arirang News.
Now, the human brain is still largely uncharted territory for even the world's best researchers, but scientists have created a new and more detailed map of the cerebral cortex, which deals with all 5 senses and functions like problem solving. The findings were published on Wednesday in the scientific journal Nature, using data from more than 200 healthy young adults and a variety of brain mapping techniques. The scientists charted out an updated map that identifies 180 areas of the cerebral cortex and 97 new areas. Now, these areas are responsible for higher cognitive functions like language and memory, which could assist in the study of conditions such as autism and schizophrenia. Well, that's all we have for now on this Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching, and we'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next scheduled bulletin coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time with our very own Han Da-an. So until then, goodbye.